Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What was difficult about it?
I couldn't. Um, oh, sorry, I couldn't. Like, I'm not used to doing meditation for that long. Like the
Yeah.
longest I've ever done it before was like 30 minutes, and to do
Sure.
it like for most of the day was almost torture, to be honest.
Yeah. A little too much, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's something, an opportunity to kind of gradually ease into it. You know. Now, part of the experience of being a little too much is probably discovering how much thought actually goes through our head, the mind racing and can't stay with the method, and that process of just, it's like turning on the light of a dark room. You turn on the light and you see all this furniture. Right? Um, Maybe physically there's some discomfort. So the physical part, it's easy. We, if you watch TV or you do computer stuff, you can just put your leg in a meditation posture and just kind of adapt to this posture, learning how to massage and learning how to stretch. In time, your body will adapt to the meditation posture. It's really the mind. The mind has a lot of thoughts, and we're just not used to the extent to which the comings and going of thoughts and feelings, and especially our habit tendencies, you know, our resistances, right? So the first step to practice is just to give yourself a lot of room, a lot of space, instead of being tethered to these thoughts and feelings and come and go that um, dictates our mood, dictates how we feel. We give it a lot of room just to let them be. Let them be. Right? So, making sure that the body is grounded in the midst of all that, so that the defense mechanisms is diminished. And then relaxing, and then grounding. Then it's possible to give our thoughts and feelings a lot of space. Right? So that's very important. If we don't take care of the body on a somatic level, uh, you would just end up kind of talking to yourself, giving giving yourself some commands. Okay, give it a lot of space. I'm gonna accept it. Openness. That doesn't really work. It's just another wandering thought. So the only way to do it when we are confronted with a lot of thoughts and feelings, and instead of being pushed and pulled by the nose around them, first step, relax. Learn to relax the body, because at that time a lot of chemicals, cortisol, have already flushed down through your body. So the body becoming tense, fight or flight. So you relax the body, diffuse the tension, then you ground yourself, and then you can access your mood or your attitude towards these thoughts and feelings. Right? Once we're relaxed, we'll be able to be grounded and be content. Be content. Right? Not in a reactionary mode. And only then we will not be able to be kind of pushed around by the thoughts and feelings. We won't get so wound up. Right? That's what I mean by giving it a lot of space. Like, it's all right. So our attitudes, it's all good. Thoughts, feeling that come, just do what they normally do. Right? Whereas us, we just use the method. So we're not really affected by that. So that's important, right, to cultivate, especially for beginners on retreat practice. Right? Usually we're so distracted by everything else, engaged with all the objects in the world, the sight and sounds in our daily life. We don't really know the extent to which and the amount of traffic of our thoughts and feelings that's actually going on in our interior life. But once the stimulations and distractions are put aside, then it's almost like an amplification of what's going on inside us. Right? So it's a little overwhelming. And then we have physical discomfort, so that just adds the fuel to the flame. So if you can learn to have your composure and cultivate in these moments, in the simplified space of a retreat, learning not to be affected, not to be pushed and pulled, manipulated by thoughts and feelings, and still be all right. That is the beginning of kind of working through them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is true not only for beginners, but also for people that have done retreats many times, because all of our lives, our inner monologue, is all that we've ever known. So we're just tied to it. We identify ourselves with it. Our sense of self actually is directly linked to it. So it's very hard not to be affected by it. Usually when we think of something upsetting, we just become upset. Think of something happy, we just become elated. So there's no real separation. So the fluctuations of the coming and going of thoughts constantly dictate how we actually feel, what our experiences are. So it's important in the course of meditation practice to cultivate, to be able to be at ease, composure, not being affected by the comings and going. So that's one of the most important skills. Yeah, Xing?
And when you say not affected, does that mean we always have the ability to come back to the relaxed body? Is that what you mean? Because I think I can see a lot of very subtle, when I do things, I can see a lot of subtle tendency to label things. Just that kind of very initial stage of when I do things, I can see there's something very subtle happening. And then when you say not affected, does that mean I can always have some distance with those tendencies, able to always be grounded in the body and not kind of fully guided by those tendencies? Is that what you mean?
Partly. Thank you for asking. So the problem is not our labeling, it's not our ability to discern what's happening. The problem is not also our words and language, even the monologue. The problem is vexations, right? So emotional disturbance that stirs up by the labeling, the discrimination, the compartmentalizing of people into, this is a friend, that's a foe, and this one I don't really care. All these different things that we impute on the external world. And also we objectify ourselves, so we make ourselves into a thing, and then we criticize it. I'm not good enough, I can never do this. So we tend to make everything into a thing, and then vexations come, right? So that ability to discriminate, to discern rather, to identify what's happening, that's not really the problem. So the more we engage in this practice in which we shine the spotlight on how we feel, what is present in us, the more we become aware of what is vexations, right? What is just labeling. Does that make sense? So more and more we become aware of the natural function of our brain, of our mind, right? And the accompanying disturbances that come along with that. So we'll be able to distinguish that, and learning not to be so engulfed and wrapped around by the vexations. So vexations, emotional disturbances, for those of you who are new, are something like grasping, rejecting, right? Sense of having, gaining something, sense of lacking, no good, right? All these are manifestations of greed and aversion. Of course, most of the time when people sit, they're not really having greed and aversion, right? It's not that end of the spectrum. But there is a spectrum, right? So you may not be kind of angry, but you may have a shallower side of that, or a lighter version of that. Right? When you experience wandering thoughts, you can't concentrate. Right? You can simply experience that, oh, I can't concentrate. And thoughts are coming and going. As opposed to, thoughts are coming and going, and you start to feel vexations, like, I'm really frustrated. Why can't I do this? Other people are doing fine. Why can't I do this? So that is the extra layer that we're kind of overlaying the natural experience of wandering thoughts. Do you know what I'm saying? So identifying those, and when those happen, you discover, okay, come back, relax, not be so affected. So that once this mind of disturbance, the vexations, are diminished, or not so active, then the thought processes and the nature of thinking itself almost become freer. Okay? Now in sitting meditation, when these thought processes are not infused with emotional afflictions, then they become diminished. So you will start to develop concentration, okay, just by itself. Right? So what I'm saying is, this is very important. When the emotional afflictions, I'm going to say it again, right? When the emotional afflictions are absent, that accompany wandering thoughts, and you're still maintaining, presence of mind, composure, you're not affected by it, thoughts come and go back to the method. When you're not affected by it, then the wandering thoughts will start to diminish. Okay? In sitting time. So the culprit is really the emotional afflictions, however subtle that may be. Annoyance, a sense of lack, sense of seeking, wanting to get somewhere, to fix something. When that's absent, the thoughts themselves, fine. They become purer and purer, and then they just start to diminish. Now what happens when we get used to doing this, and we translate that to daily life? In daily life, where circumstances require us to think, to use our brain, to engage, to research, when the vexations diminish, what happens to the thinking process is they become freer. And it's their ability to make connections, to make new connections, to different patterns of thoughts, different ideas increase. And that is a sign of creativity and intelligence. So the real culprit is not the thinking, it's not thoughts, it's not the labels that we have learned, English, Chinese, or German, or French. It's not the words, it's not the monologue, it's the overlay of vexations that has habitually developed along with the words and language and labels. Right? We have a lot of associations to the words that we use. You know what I'm saying? So they're so subtle that, and imperceptible that we don't really, we're not really aware of them. In meditation, you start to be aware of them, not be affected by them. Not be affected by words and language, and then in time, all the subtle vexations that accompany words and language. Okay? And in daily life, how that translates is we become more creative. We become more freer in our thinking process. And of course, more clear in our thought train, undisturbed by the emotional inflictions that accompanies them. Does that make sense? So practitioners, long-time practitioners, if the more they practice, the more rigid they become. They're probably doing something wrong, because the natural course of event is the more they practice, the more creative they become, the more they're able to link certain ideas and notions. So they're less locked into their tunnel vision way of seeing things, and the more they're able to see from multiple perspectives, even be in sympathy, empathy with how other people may feel. Right? The more we're locked into the self-referential vexations, the less we're able to be empathetic to what others may feel. Right? The less we will kind of other people, right? These people are just like that. Right? They are just like this. So that's because of the vexations that's present. So when vexations are absent, then the true function and freedom of our thoughts, our beings, our creativity manifest. And all that comes from the simple exercise, cultivation of recognizing vexations and learning not to be affected by them. Right? And in time, you won't be affected by them. Less and less they will arise. Does that make sense? Yeah, so very important practice. So that's why my great grandmaster, Master Xu Yun, says, this is a great master in the 20th century, mid 20th century. He says, don't be afraid of wandering thoughts. Just be afraid that you don't even recognize them, right? So, wandering thoughts, they come, expose, recognize, and then just return to the method. Yeah. And then that's the beginning of freeing ourselves from the entrapment, being ensnared by or dictated by these thoughts and feelings that come and go. And then our thoughts will become much more freer. Okay, any other questions? Yes. Is that Vanya?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for being
Hi.
here. At first, I want to say I'm I've seen you sit in that place on videos only until now, and it's really nice to see you live in front of that chest.
Yeah.
I have a
Did you have
question.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I think I've heard you make a distinction between wandering and scattered thoughts.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get.
So you want to know the difference between wandering thoughts and scattered thoughts. Okay? Give me 1 second. Let me change the battery here. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. So, sorry, it's a little cold here in the meditation hall. There are many types of mental processes. Okay. In meditation, we're able to discover them more so than daily life. The extent with which we're able to expose the different currents of thoughts and mentation, if you will. So we can put them on a spectrum. Right? The first type of thoughts, this is, of course, our method. Meditation on the breath, counting the breath, or other methods, silent illumination, koan. All those are thoughts too. Right? So what we're trying to do is to collect all the fragmented thoughts and try to concentrate them to just one thought. So unified state. So in the process, from a fragmented sense of self to become more coherent, congruent, more clear, right? More concentrated. All that is the foundation before we even discuss about no self or awakening. So the self must become congruent, focused, and grounded and clear. How do you do that? You work with the thoughts, right? So the thoughts are scattered, you concentrate it, and then unify it, more clear, more grounded. Okay, so thoughts and self, intricate connection. All right, so that's the basic backdrop. Now, thoughts, thoughts exist on a continuum. Besides the method as a thought you're trying to stay with, there's the first type of thought that's just fragmented, scattered, right? Wandering from here or there, without a beginning, middle, and end, just suddenly come. Those are what we call scattered thoughts. Scattered thoughts. The next type of thought, a little bit better, is the mind is able to stay with one thing, that is your method, but once in a while it wanders. It wanders off, and come back. Wanders off, and come back. But basically it kind of stays with one thing. That's what we call wandering thoughts. Okay? There's another type of thought. Has a beginning, has a middle, and has an end. It's like a running movie that's going on, right? And the mind is ruminating about something. And this usually happens when we have some hang-ups in daily life. Unresolved problem. Recurring project that you didn't finish yet, right? A paper assignment or project at work. So it just circulates about that That's what we call discursive thinking. So that's it's not necessarily worse than scattered thoughts. It's just something you have some concern about, or it just has made an impression on you that just circulates. Every time you sit, and your wandering thoughts, scattered thoughts, doesn't really go anywhere else. It just goes to that. It goes to that. So that's called discursive thinking. Okay. Now, within that, there is something worse, right? And that is habit patterns. And this is the type that has an emotional inflection to it. There's a tone to it, right? Sometimes when people go into meditation deeply, they excavate some deep pattern within themselves. Right? For example, they sit and they experience something, concentrated, very blissful. But instead of keep on going, they start to have fear. Right? Fear. Now this fear may come from something that's very deep rooted. Every time in daily life, in regular life, they encounter some obstacle or something new, something unknown, they always resort to this, I can't do it. What's going to happen if I keep on going? So even when they meditate very well, they meet this kind of block, and this pattern will come up. Right? So it's a kind of discursive thinking because it involves the mind start to ruminate. Right? But it has an emotional tone to it, such as fear. Another thing that's common is loneliness. Another thing that's common is kind of self-disparaging, self-sabotaging. Idea that I can't do this. Who am I to think that I can meditate? What am I doing here? Even though they're doing well, they have these kind of things that come up. So sometimes for a lot of people, they feel they're not good enough. Which is a kind of subset of this self-sabotaging tendency. So that is also discursive thinking, but it has this strong emotional tone to it. So that's why it's so important when I was answering Xing's question, not be affected by it. What does it mean to cultivate the ability not be affected by it? You have to really practice in the circumstances when there's just regular wandering thoughts, and the regular emotional ideas that come up. I want this, I don't want that. Hate wandering thoughts. Why can I meditate well? All these other easier to handle type of emotional tones. Really, really learn not to be affected by it. See it. So, oh, here it comes again, like an old friend. Okay, come, just sit over here and let's practice together. Go back to the method. Not really. You don't want to suppress it. You don't want to follow it either. You see? So it's just like, recognize. Okay, come. Go back to the method. If we can't do this, then when the real emotional patterns come out, we're just overwhelmed. Now we give up meditation. Who am I? What am I doing here? I can't do this. Or kind of fear, or loneliness. So we really have to practice not to be affected by the mediocre kind of emotional tones and feelings and patterns, so that when we get deep into meditation, we really begin to free ourselves from these limitations, and we go past these barriers. Then on a personal level, we really start to see the transformation. Does that make sense? So first, the innocuous, not so harmful, like scatter thoughts that have no beginning, middle, or end. They're just thinking about pizza, lunch, what am I going to do after this, blah, 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 blah. All those things. Learn how to deal with that. Then, developing concentration, the mind still has wanderings, bring it back. The wanderings, usually, it's just thoughts, subtle thoughts. And they don't really have an emotional tone to them. You're not really pulled strongly, push and pull. They're just wandering. You can still maintain the number, for example, 1, 2, count the breath, 5. Today's pizza was good, 6, it's funny like that, So basically the method is still there, but the mind wanders, So you have to, pay more attention to the method, appreciate the method, really love the method, then you don't love the wandering thoughts anymore. They'll start to die down. And then there's just discursive thinking, hang-ups, project that's unfinished. Someone has said something that's kind of hurtful. Things in daily life, they'll start to come up. What do? Recognize, still go to the method of practice, right? Even though it's like a record playing sometimes, just again and again. Sometimes in those situations, you have to complicate your method. So the method itself requires more of your attention, right? Like you count backwards, odd numbers, and then you count even numbers. So you're more involved in the method. Then these ruminations will slowly diminish. Sometimes it's good to stand up and do walking meditation, which involves more of our awareness, right? Understand the movements, sensations, and then these rumination type, discursive type will diminish. And then fourth one are these, strong feelings that are that we have tapped into. That is it's almost like our baseline, default patterns. So in order to really transform ourselves, we gotta be able to face them. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So be able to distinguish between all of these, it's good exercise. It's all part of understanding ourselves more.
Would you say the things like childhood trauma or ancient memories are the last category that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they usually have a lot more of the emotional tones and there are patterns. Once we see them clearly in a simplified space of meditation, seated, then we really start to recognize them in daily life. So usually we're just so locked into them. There are habit way of behaving, relating to other people that we really don't know. We can't see them in daily life. But so you have to kind of first see them in meditation. It's not that we're looking out for them. No, I'm not talking about. Just use the method. Use the method when you get into good states and some experiences, they'll naturally come up. And then we understand them a little more, and then we go back to the method, and then in daily life we'll start to notice how they manifest, in our conversations, our defenses, our kind of self-disparaging tendency, or our fear, or our wishing to be alone and away from people, and or some people, they're the distracting type. They're the joker in the group. Every time people gather together, friends, they always, they're the joker. They distract themselves in order to diffuse tension. So that's the way they cope with things. And so you'll see in meditation, these people just start to distract themselves. When they get into a very good state, they start to distract themselves. Instead of going forward, they distract themselves. So recognizing this, you see that in daily life, how we actually live our life, how we are limited, and how we can be free. So all that is on the spectrum of recognizing the self, maturing the self, and liberating the self. No self. Now how we deal with that is work with thoughts, feelings, and embodiment, our bodies. So all of us are kind of at this level, working with the self, discovering more. And by the way, even people who have those moments of, flashes of awakening experiences, it's not linear. It's not that, they've gone through the first two phases of recognizing the self and maturing the self. It's not linear. It's circular. Once they're able to kind of free themselves, have some powerful experience of insight, of selflessness, awakening, then they really know in their daily life, when they're kind of back to normal, they discover more things about themselves. You see? They discover more patterns, deeper layers. So it's like a person shining window. Shine. First, there's a lot of chrome and dirt and all kind of coloration shine. If a person has truly experienced what it is like to have no window at all, that kind of clarity, and then when they're back to dealing with the window, they totally know. Even if it's clear window, even when the birds can't even tell, like they kind of boop. You know how birds run into windows? Even if other people can't tell, you can tell. You can tell when the self is present. Self-attachment is present. So this endless, practice is endless, continuous. So we don't have a goal in mind. We just work with it. Learn to work with it. And that will not only benefit ourselves, free ourselves from our habits, tendencies, and come to know what true peace and happiness is. Everyone around us will benefit. And we have different levels of relationship with people around us. Some people we have deep karmic affinity. Some people we have other types of affinity. But just through interacting with them, we learn so much about ourselves, and we learn to put ourselves down to help people, to help those around us. So it's all good. But this is the basic layout of the map, if you will. You're getting more than you asked for. You just asked a simple question of wandering thoughts and scattered thought. I'm giving you like a whole bunch of stuff.
That's very clear. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, maybe someone else. Now, all that, just a quick note, okay? All that, in relating to our one-day retreat, all of you experience, concretely what we are dealing with at the working end of things is just leg pains, right? Leg pains, wandering thoughts, drowsiness and all that. But what I'm doing is giving you the larger picture of things, so you don't become discouraged. I'm just dealing with leg pains. What am I doing? All this kind of self, maturing the self, letting go of the self. That's what all of you are on the path. You're on it. It's just that, you're in this dense forest, so all you see is just branches, leaves and branches. But what I've done is just giving you, the branches, but I'm giving you what the forest is like. What's the way out of that forest? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's okay. It's okay when you just see branches and tripping over yourself over some root that's exposed above the dirt, and you kind of learn how to walk and so on. But all of that, all the intricacy of who you are and how you practice and so on, all of that is your path. You know? But there's a larger scheme of things. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi. I had your last point was very interesting because I didn't quite understand during the practice some things did happen in terms of the clarity came, but then I still ended up tripping and stumbling and only see branches. But occasionally you see the clarity and then suddenly you realize that you're not completely there. It goes, you go back down again, you practice, and then you see a little bit more, and then you go back again.
Yeah.
Is that the normal? Because I thought that was not seeing anything clear, that's still needing to practice.
Yeah. Clarity is not a thing. There's a whole range of clear. Like it's like you're walking in the fog. There's a whole range of fog. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes very dense, sometimes very shallow, and you can still see things. Yeah, normal, normal. And because of our, psychosomatic conditioning and all the things that's happening beneath the level of our awareness, the different situations physiologically, emotionally, that kind of pulls us back out of the clarity state, that we're not able to sustain it. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's fine. Yeah, when we have experienced something good, we don't try to seek after it. When we experience that appear to be not so good, don't make a big deal out of it. Just keep going. Yeah. So not affected by all the scenery on this path. Yeah, not so affected by all the scenery on this path. Keep going. Then you'll discover that you become freer and freer. The more you're caught up with the scenery, clarity, good. Wandering thought, not so good. The more that we're caught up with that, the more you're just circling in this dense forest and never come out. Right? Just keep walking. Keep walking. In the process, you learn so much about yourself, other people, all the different leaves, all the roots and branches, and which pathway is really good, what is a pitfall, Keep going. Yeah, not so caught up by it. That is the way to do it. Okay, so okay. Anyone else?
Mark has a question.
Yeah. How are you doing, Mark? Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Okay. My question relates to Anna's and also to what you said about your use of the phrase self-sabotage. Sometimes in meditation, one's experience is kind of linear and things get quieter and quieter, but at other times they can get noisier and noisier. And I'm wondering what the dynamic is. Is it that as you approach a place of relative stillness, quiet, as you approach that place, something kicks in and your self takes fright and you're like, oh, I'm not going there. And then all kinds of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And it feels like if it, it could be 2 steps forward, 1 back, or it could be 1 step forward and then 2 or 3 back. I've noticed this dynamic of things going from bad to worse. And could that be a sign of progress? Let's hope it is.
Yeah. From the larger scheme of things, it's all good. It's all good. Even when things are, really we find ourselves in a low point, just like opening a can of worms. All these things come out. Stay on the path. Just continue. Stay on, continue. Now, why do certain things happen? There are so many things that's happening beneath the layer of our conscious mind and our physiological conditions, that all the chemicals in the body. Who knows why certain things? Because a lot of thoughts are actually biological. Now, this is contrary to how people usually think. What do you mean? I'm doing the thinking. I think. Usually we're not in charge of our thinking. If we're really in charge of our thinking, why would you have wandering thoughts when you want to concentrate? Right? You should be able to stop the wandering thoughts. There's so many things, because a lot of wandering thoughts, a lot of our desires even, or aversion, are just kind of, they have a life of their own. Now this is a kind of a popular expression, but really it's just the workings of causes and conditions. And there's a lot of things that's happening beneath the level, on a chemical level, neurological level. Certain things may be happening biologically, that your body is regulating things, that it actually triggers certain patterns and generate thought. You know what I'm saying? So we're not really in charge. The thoughts are not you. Okay? It's not to say that we're bipolar, like we're not our thoughts, I'm not thinking, I'm not saying that, but there are just a lot of things that's happening beneath the level of what human beings are able to be aware of. Right? So, in a sense, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is when they arise, when something is triggered, when it arises, we have a method to how to deal with that. Right? Relax. Ground. Engage with the method. Right? Always have a method. Right? Relax. Ground. Engage. Right? Whether it's engaging in daily life, continuing the conversation with other people when you discover certain things are happening, continuing that conversation, or you're washing dishes or walking or whatever. So practitioners are always in tune with their being, on a physiological level, on these subtle feeling tones that's present. So anything shifts, we know. Something's a little bit off track, or something's happening. Right? And then we have a method. Right? It's not to suppress, it's just to be aware, let it come out and just see, and we're still grounded. We're still grounded. Right? Instead of being automatically reactive to it. Right? So the ups and downs of practice, the bad going to the worse, and the worse. Sometimes the worse, the reality is, sometimes the worse, you stand up, you go take a piss, you come back, clear. Suddenly you're able to use the method. What is going on there? What's going? Don't know. That's what I mean. There's so many things that's happening, especially for practitioners on retreat. They really get a sense of this. They're struggling, they're practicing, a lot of wandering thought. They get up, get a drink of water, and the next period they just use the method. There's no perceptible kind of progress, like a linear thing in daily life. Within one period of sitting, maybe daily life, half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night, maybe there's some linear pattern. But on retreats, you really get a sense of that. There's no pattern to it. It's not like first day, struggle, second day less, third day almost there, fourth day great, fifth day almost awakening, sixth day, it's gotta be here, right? It's not like that at all. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And this is the terrain that practitioners get used to. This terrain is unlike any kind of The Tibetans, for example, they have a lot of like stages of practice. Everything seems so clear, so detailed. When this happened, you do this. When that happened, you do that. Like stages of practice. The map, really, very little to do with the terrain. The territory of actually at the working end of practice looks very different than the map. You know what I'm saying? That map only serves as a signpost when serious things come up. But the actual, concentration, why sometimes we have concentration, why sometimes we don't. There are all these things. What is controllable are three. Okay? Now, it's not to say everything is random. Guo Gu is not saying everything is random, just chance. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the terrain, it's complicated. Right? Three things that is manageable that we could cultivate is our bodies. We could learn to ground ourselves, to relax. Right? When things happen, relax. When kind of jagged edges come out of our pathway, a sudden root come up, we can learn to adapt, ground ourselves, relax into it. Right? That's body. We can have some measure of control. Second, our feeling tones, our outlook, our perspective. We can cultivate. Difficulties come, we return with gratitude. You see? So we see, opportunity instead of obstacles. Right? We learn to adapt. Now you can't adjust your attitude if your body is tense. So you have to ground yourself somatically. And then you learn to adapt. And third thing is we always have our method. I'm not talking about just counting the breath, working with the breath, silent illumination, koan. Yeah, those are methods. But Buddha Dharma has so many different methods, like the 6 perfections, right? Loving kindness, 4 immeasurable minds, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, 6 perfections, sense of discipline, cultivating discipline, virtue, right? Generosity, virtue, and diligence, patience, meditation. That's our method, right? Wisdom, to learn to take yourself out of the picture and just see what needs to be done, what can be done. Right? Take other people's perspective, not yourself's perspective. So there are all kinds of methods. Under what circumstance, what we use, it's up to us. Right? What we're familiar with and so on. So 3 things. Despite all the terrain, all the different ups and downs. You all remember? What's the first thing? Body, right? Second thing is feeling tone, our attitude towards things we can cultivate. And third thing is our method that kind of strengthens our attitude and so on. So, yeah. Body is the foundation. Okay. Mark, do you ski?
Do I ski?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Do you do what kind of sports?
I do Tai Chi.
Tai Chi? Tai Chi?
Tai Chi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you cycle?
No. I walk.
No?
I walk.
Okay. All right. So, if we do some sports like cycling, like that really get the body going, that the terrain is actually different, you know, you really get a physical sense. Tai Chi, we're kind of stationary, right? But if we walking, sometimes the eruptions are not so prominent because the speed with which you're walking is not so fast unless you're running, right? But for people that do some kind of sport, right, skiing, you know, basketball or cycling or something, they really get a sense of like the body. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? The body, because the ground is uneven, you know, which makes us very aware of our body, shifting our bodily weight, right? Shifting the body weight to gain balance. You know? So that's a metaphor. Right? The terrain of practice, that things that come up, we're always adjusting our body, adapting. You know, put more weight on left foot now and right foot now, and you know, really get a corporeal kind of sense, presence of your body, you know, in reaction to all the things that come up. Right? So that learn to ground, and then our attitude towards it, and then the method. So 3 things we can control.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah. Okay. How many of you do some kind of sports? What kind of sports do you all do? Aurelia does cycling. Oh, you really know London streets, all those bricks. Gosh, all those kind of, you know, you really get a sense of the body, right? The need to relax into it. Now, if you try to fight all those bumps, you're done. Either your forks will break or crack, or you know, you get injured. So you really have to adapt. What other sports do you guys do?
Nadia is a climber.
Climber. Okay. You gotta know where to grab, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Sailing and skiing and badminton.
Yeah. You know, when I was younger, I did a lot of skateboarding, and then I got into snowboarding. You know, the kind of terrain. You know, not so much skateboarding. You know, on the ramp or whatever. Really get a good sense of the body. You know, and you know, just imperceptibly. Perhaps that's why. I mean, that must have contributed to my Dharma practice of being in tune with the body. So I'm very aware of my bodily situations. That probably came from, you know, the kind of such an embodied sport like half pipe. Yes, Guo Gu used to do half pipe ramp skating. You know, when you go up, you hold the board, you have to come down, and every subtle shift of the weight, you can get hung up and just crash. You know, and there's even a correct way to fall. You know, for skateboarders on half pipe. You know, with your pads and so on. And then later on, snowboarding. You know, very embodied. You know, the way you lean into the board. I don't want to go on. This is probably very boring for many of you. The way you lean into the board. You know, for example, snowboarding. The way you lean into the board, your front knee really guides, and your shoulder, the alignment of your shoulder, hips, and knees. The way you lean into it actually governs where the board is. And when you go over icy patches, oh my goodness, not powdery snow, you can really, your body, like those of you who ski probably, you know, like you get such a great sense of the presence of your body. So when I was younger, doing that really gave me a kind of, you know, unintentionally a foundation with the presence of the body. I'm not advocating you guys start snowboarding or skiing. It's probably too late. Probably hurt your hips, you know. But even cycling, you know, cycling or just start getting used to the terrain, you really get a sense of the body. Very good exercise.
Right. Guo Gu, I think it's 5 o'clock UK time, and that's 12 your time, lunchtime.
We'll conclude here. So, the end of the retreat, we have to think back with gratitude and appreciation, the benefit of practice, how we come to this path. So we'll do an abbreviated form of gratitude. Okay? All you have to do is join your palm and just listen to my words. And just pay gratitude. Would that be all right? Okay, so join your palms. We're grateful to the Buddhas of the past, present, and future in the 10 directions. We're grateful to the Dharma, the teachings of the past, present, and future in the 10 directions. We're grateful to the Sangha of the past, present, and future in the 10 directions. We're grateful to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. We're grateful to all the generations of holy Sangha practitioners. We're grateful to all the generations of practitioners from India, China, Korea, and Japan. We're grateful to all the people in our lives and the conditions that has allowed us to come on this retreat. We're grateful to all the retreatants. And we can now make a vow to ourselves or direct the merit from the practice and transfer it to an endeavor or people in our lives. So all the positive energy, the good that we have cultivated, transfer to someone or something. Take a moment. When we hear the bell, we'll do one bow. So bow. Okay, thank you. We will have several events that's coming up. There's an event for young people. What's the date? March 21st. It's on the Tallahassee Chan Center website. Under event, you can see the listing of some special events. There's a lot going on. So take a look and sign up for the ones that you want to pursue. Okay. Now see you again soon.
Thank you very much for joining.
Bye bye.
And thank you everyone for having won the retreat.
Take care.
Thank you.